Welcome back. You're still watching Network Africa on Channels Television. Now, there's nothing more painful for a mother to go through than the pain of giving birth to a baby that's already passed away. What is more alarming is that as of today, a leading maternal health NGO has revealed that Nigeria ranks the second on the list of highest countries with stillbirth rates. According to WebMD, many stillbirths happen without warning in women without any risk factors. But women at risk for such stillbirths are those who are victims of who have diabetes or high blood pressure, and they need to be watched closely. We also understand that the baby will usually need to be checked during the last weeks of the pregnancy in order to avoid having a stillbirth. And now, based on what we just told you about Nigeria ranking number 2, here's a list of the top 10 countries on a global scale which have the highest stillbirth rates. Topping the list is Pakistan. Nigeria comes in at number 2. Chad is next. Niger comes in at number 4. Guinea-Bissau is next. Somalia, Djibouti, the Central African Republic, Togo, and in at number 10 is Mali. Well, we're joined now by Dr. Sumbo Odesheye, a gynecologist from the Lagos State University Teaching Hospital, Luth. Dr. Sumbo, thank you very much for joining us on Network Africa.
Thank you very much. Glad to be a part of this program today.
We're glad to have you. Thank you for making out the time to be with us. Now, Nigeria ranks number 2 on the list of countries with the highest rates of stillbirth. That is actually a huge problem, because we understand that there are about 300,000 cases of stillbirths recorded annually. Why is this happening?
So, simply put, we would say a stillbirth is the death of a baby prior to delivery after the age of viability, which in Nigeria we say is 28 weeks up until the time of birth. Now, like you have rightly said prior to now, a lot of the stillbirths that occur are unexplained. However, for those that can be explained, we have different causes for them. Now, the problem I find that occurs with us in Nigeria, as well as many sub-Saharan countries, it reflects the indicators of our poor antenatal care services, as well as the poor obstetric and emergency care services that we have for our women. That will largely be responsible for the high numbers of stillbirth rates we have in our country presently.
So who needs to be doing what to check those centers, those antenatal centers, as you rightly mentioned?
Yeah, okay, so the way to address the problem will quite be at different stages. The government has its role to play, and when I mean the government at every level, the local governments, the state government, as well as the federal government. They need to put policies in place in order to make equitable distribution of proper antenatal care services to be available across board. Because if you still look at this figure that we have for Nigeria, we'll see that it's still unevenly distributed in Nigeria. For example, Lagos will have fewer figures of stillbirth rates as opposed to if you look up north, for example. And even within Lagos, you will find that the more urban centers have lower stillbirth rates as opposed to the more rural areas of Lagos. Again, this just demonstrates the unequitable distribution of our antenatal care services that we have available across the state and indeed across the whole of Nigeria as a whole. So the goal will be for government parastatals as well as hospital owners to make sure they have the appropriate services and the appropriate staff employed to be able to address a lot of the causes of the stillbirth rates that we presently face.
Just before I ask you my next question regarding your suggestions about what the various levels of government need to do, what about on an individual note? What should women be doing, on their part to avoid this situation?
Yes. So when we talk about the individual role a woman has to play, which frankly speaking has a lot to do with improving this, drastic figures that we have. So, for example, when we talk about stillbirth, we have certain predisposing factors. For example, a woman who is having her first pregnancy has no business not registering for antenatal care early enough. So, if you're pregnant for the first time, you need to go register at an antenatal care service early enough. Now, only way many women will know this will be through female empowerment, health education, education of women across the board. So, the way to get a lot of individual women to know what to do and how to go about it boils down to the home care and the level of education the woman has received. Because as I'm sure you may be aware, if you look at the stillbirth rates and you look at the class of people that are more involved in stillbirth, you will find out that the uneducated people have the larger numbers of babies that are stillbirth as opposed to those that are educated. And this simply means that an educated woman knows enough to go register for antenatal care when she's pregnant, again because she has the financial wherewithal as well as the female empowerment to go register for antenatal care.
Well, Dr. Sumbo, you mentioned what the various levels of government need to be doing in order to prevent this alarming number from increasing. My question is, are we where we were a year ago, 2 years ago, or have, I'm asking based on what you've observed as a doctor, the facilities and the equipment that were made available to you or that have been available for, let's say, 5 years ago, is that still what you have in place, for instance, in the Lagos University Teaching Hospital where you work, or have those facilities or equipment, have they been replaced? Or are we still using things that are obsolete that might also be contributing to to us being number 2, Nigeria being number 2 on the list of countries with the highest stillbirth rates?
Yes. Okay. So when we look at the hospital where I work, for instance, we're a tertiary center, so we get a lot of referrals from places where they've already mismanaged these women. So at the time they're sending them to us, they're really at a bad state. Notwithstanding, when they get to us, the question now is, what do we have available on ground in the hospital where I work? Largely speaking, for obstetrics and the neonatology who take care of the new babies, to a very large extent, we have quite a number of things to work with. But unfortunately, looking at the larger subsets of Nigeria where we are, we're still restrained and hampered by a lot of things. Yes, we will do better if we have more things to work with. But as we have now, we actually do have quite a number of things that we can work with and make a difference. But again, the problem I find with us as a tertiary center, like I mentioned earlier, is we already have bad cases being referred to us. We're not a primary level center, we're not a secondary level center. So we have patients coming from primary and secondary, from the traditional birth attendants. Quite a number of our women still attend traditional birth attendants for their deliveries.
Well, so Dr. Sumbo, obviously this is not a conversation that we can cover in a day, and I hope you will oblige us probably at sometime next week or in the following week. But as I said earlier on, we do appreciate your time. Thank you so much for joining us on Network Africa. Now, here are just a few red flags you might need to look out for in order to avoid having a stillbirth. Be very mindful of sudden vaginal bleeding in the 2nd and 3rd trimester of your pregnancy. If you experience back pain, it's time to call the doctor. If you experience tenderness in the uterine region, you might need to see a doctor as well. You might also need to contact your doctor in the event that you have cramps that come and go as hard contractions way before your due date, if there's reduced baby movements inside of your womb, if there are reduced kick counts from your baby after 28 weeks, and stillness inside of the womb, or absolutely no movements, that's when you might need to contact your doctor. And on that note, here's our question of the day. How can stillbirths be prevented? Feel free to send us your feedback either via email or Twitter. The address and handle are right there on your screen. Thank you so much for watching Network Africa on Channels Television. I'm Cynthia Arel.